Hard light modifiers. All of the modifiers that you see here are going to create a hard light on your subject or on the background. And so what hard light is you're going to have bright highlights and dark shadows. You're going to have really crisp transitions between shadows and highlights. You're going to emphasize texture. You're going to have increased specularity. All of these things are characteristics of hard light. Now, I have many different hard light modifiers here, including just shooting a plain bare bulb. Now, most portrait photographers shy away from these modifiers for lighting the face. And the reason is, like I said, they emphasize texture. So that's going to emphasize wrinkles and emphasize blemishes. But what happens if you're shooting a portrait where you want to emphasize wrinkles or you want to emphasize texture, and that's the mood? These modifiers here might be the right modifier for that feel. And the other thing is, what happens if you want to do a shoot that has the feel of sunshine? It's bright and glowy, bright highlights, crisp shadows. Again, these modifiers will fit that mood. So you always have to figure out, what are you trying to say with your light? And in certain cases, hard light is going to be the right choice. So a hard light may just be your bare bulb, no modifier on your light at all. But these are all modifiers that do something a little bit more. They concentrate the light, or they throw the light farther, or they make it a little bit more specular, a little bit poppier. So let's take a look at these hard light modifiers. In this case, these are all hard reflectors. So looking at the hard reflectors that we have here, I have many, but honestly, most people will probably only have this one. So this is a very, very common modifier called a zoom reflector. Now, this is a zoom reflector because you can change the zoom of the light or the focus of the light by where you place it on the strobe. But many lighting companies don't have the ability to do that because they have a different mount. So instead of being called a zoom reflector, they're just called a reflector. Now, you can actually tell what the quality of light of this is going to be just by looking at it. First of all, it's small. So you know a smaller light source is going to give you harder light, and it's silver. Silver on a modifier is going to give you harder light. So this is going to be hard and super hard light, you can tell that. And so I use this modifier all the time for many different reasons. One reason I'll use it is just to give me a little bit of throw of light onto the background. If I have a bare bulb, the light floods everywhere. And the zoom reflector gives me just a little bit more control over my light and my scene. So I'm often using this to light the background, or I'll put a gel on a zoom reflector. With this gel, I can fill in the shadows. I can gel the background. I can add just a little bit of kiss of color to the scene. And then the other reason I will use this modifier is I use it a lot in beauty photography when I want really crisp light. So this might be a case when I want a razor sharp shadow underneath the jawline, or I want really bright highlights. Now keep in mind, this shows texture. So when I use this modifier, because it is such a hard modifier, I know that there'll be retouching involved. Or I shoot with a model with really great skin, or a combination of both of those things. So this is an essential, and this is something I use all the time. What's great, it's also typically one of the less expensive modifiers. But if this is the one most people have, what is all this other stuff that you see on the table? I'm going to explain what they are, but honestly, for most people, this is going to be sufficient. So you got a zoom reflector here. Now in the back left, we have something called a magnum reflector. This would probably be the other common modifier that a photographer would have, and fashion photographers have this a lot. And the reason is it's a little bit wider, right? And so what it does is it gives a little bit more even spread of light. And also because it's wider, it's going to be a little bit softer than the zoom reflector, but it still has this nice texture of silver, so it's specular. In other words, fashion photographers use this when they want that sunny, crisp light feel, but they want it to be even throughout the scene. This will give you much more even light. At times, I will use this for beauty photography when I want that sunny feel. And with a little bit of modification, you get that nice hard light, but you can tone it down just a bit. And so what you can actually do is you can actually use a diffuser, or in this case, this is a piece of diffusion, okay? And what it does is it cuts down on that contrast. It cuts down on the harshness a little bit, and you can actually cut it to fit in front of your modifier, or you can use a diffuser just like you have on the front of a softbox. So I can get hard light, but not quite as much texture out of it. So what's nice is when you know how these modifiers work and you know the tools available to you, you can change the light and bend it to your will. So this, again, is a magnum reflector. So how about this other stuff that we've got back here? This one's called a wide zoom, this one's called a telezoom, and you can actually guess what they do by looking at the shape of the modifier. I've said many times before that you can think of light like a bucket of water. So let's just say that we grab this bucket. What do you think this bucket does? First of all, it's silver, so it's going to be contrasty. It's small, but not super small, but it's still going to be a hard light source. But the shape is what is much more important. Imagine that this is filled with water, and you toss that bucket of water. What's going to happen? Well, two things will happen. First of all, the light, or the water in this analogy, is going to stay focused a little bit longer, right? If I throw this bucket of water, the water stays focused in that funnel a little bit longer before it spreads out. So if you want to focus your light a bit, you can use one of these. But also, if I take this bucket of water and I throw it, it's going to reach much farther than if I were throwing a pan. A shallow pan of water, what happens is the water goes everywhere and it just can't reach far because it dissipated too quickly. But with a deep bucket, I can throw it and it keeps its shape. So this is a telezoom reflector. And telezoom reflector is going to give you very hard light, but it throws it over a long area. This is also called a long zoom by some companies, or a long reflector. It will also give you more even light further away. So these are all characteristics of this modifier. And then you have the wide zoom, which kind of has characteristics of both of those. So this is why I think it's important that you don't need to know every single modifier, but if you know the bucket analogy and you know silver and size and how that affects all of the modifiers, you kind of have an idea of the qualities of light you're going to get. So to summarize all of these modifiers, from the bare bulb to all of these hard reflectors, all of these are going to give you hard light, which means a crisp transition from shadow to highlight. Bright highlights, really dark shadows, unless you use fill. They'll give you more texture, more specularity, but each one of these based on the shape is going to give you a little bit different types of control over the spread or the focus of the light.